The morning sunlight spilled across the glass walls of my office, turning the skyline into molten gold. I leaned back in my leather chair, silk blouse cool against my skin, a fresh cup of coffee steaming on my desk. From up here on the 38th floor, New York felt like mine. I was scanning a list of investment pitches when my phone buzzed. Ethan Cole. The name hit me like the faint sting of an old scar. I hadn't seen it in years, not since the day he laughed in a crowded conference room and told me my degree in business communication was basically a diploma in chit-chat. Back then, I was 23, fresh out of college, and desperate to prove myself. Now, I was 32, CEO of an investment firm worth over $200 million. And apparently, Ethan needed money. I opened the email. His company, Cole Tech Industries, was seeking urgent capital to avoid bankruptcy. The irony nearly made me choke on my coffee. The pitch meeting was in 2 days. He didn't know it yet, but the person deciding his company's fate was the same woman he once dismissed like an intern fetching coffee. I traced my finger over the fountain pen resting on my desk, an heirloom from my grandmother. Her words echoed in my mind. Write your own story, Claire. Even if they refuse to read it now, make sure they can't put it down later. 9 years earlier, my life looked nothing like the skyline outside my window today. Back then, I was just Claire Donovan, a freshly minted college graduate from Ohio, clutching my framed degree like it was a golden ticket. My parents had done their best, but money was always tight. I was the first in my family to graduate from a university, and I believed, naively, that hard work would be enough. When I landed a junior marketing associate job at Cole Tech Industries, I thought my life was about to change. The office was sleek, buzzing with energy, and the CEO, Ethan Cole, was a man people seemed to orbit like a planet. Confident, charming, untouchable. On my second week, I was invited to sit in on a product launch meeting. I remember smoothing my skirt nervously, my grandmother's fountain pen in hand, to take notes. When it was my turn to contribute, I offered a marketing angle I'd been working on all night, about using relatable storytelling to humanize the product. Ethan chuckled. Not kindly. Claire, what was your degree in again? Business communication, I said, trying to sound confident. His smirk widened. So, a diploma in talking? Cute. But in the real world, degrees like that don't keep the lights on.
The room laughed.
My cheeks burned. My hands gripped the pen so tightly the metal dug into my skin. I mumbled something about revising my idea, but my voice barely carried. After the meeting, I hid in the bathroom, fighting back tears. That was the first time I truly felt small in a room. I called my grandmother that night, my voice shaking. She listened quietly, then said the words I still carry. Honey, some people will measure you by the wrong ruler. Don't spend your life trying to fit it. Write your own story. I quit 2 weeks later. No backup plan, no job offers, just a stubborn fire in my chest and a $200 vintage pen in my purse. I didn't know where I was going, but I swore to myself I would never again give someone the power to make me feel that small. Leaving Cole Tech was like stepping into a snowstorm without a coat. I had a tiny savings account, a one-bedroom apartment in Queens, and no clear idea of what to do next. For the first year, I pieced my life together with odd jobs, copywriting for small businesses, waitressing at night, even tutoring high school students in public speaking. My days blurred into late nights fueled by instant noodles and cheap coffee. But every evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, reading about business trends, marketing analytics, and startup case studies. I devoured every free online course I could find. It was during one of those nights that I came across Margaret Lane, a seasoned venture capitalist who ran a small podcast about women in business. Something about her voice made me believe I could be more than just a survivor. I emailed her, not asking for money, just advice.
To my shock, she replied.
2 weeks later, I was sitting across from her in a cafe, my grandmother's fountain pen tucked into my notebook. You have a sharp mind, she said after hearing my ideas. But you need skin in the game. Start small. Don't wait for someone to hand you permission. Her words lit something in me. I took a risk, investing nearly all my savings into a tiny health tech startup run by 2 women I'd met at a networking event. For months, it felt like I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Then, almost overnight, their app went viral. My small stake tripled in value. That one gave me the seed money to invest in another venture, and another. I made mistakes, sure, but I learned fast. By my third year, I had a portfolio worth just over $500,000. By year 6, I'd quietly crossed the $5 million mark. Through it all, I kept my success quiet. On social media, I posted the occasional coffee shop photo or a picture of my cat, Luna. To my old colleagues and Ethan, I probably looked like just another average woman in New York. But behind the scenes, I was building something far bigger. When the time was right, I launched Donovan Capital, my own investment firm. We specialized in sustainable tech, women-led startups, and education platforms. The kind of businesses that would have taken a chance on the 23-year-old me. And now, the man who once mocked my degree was walking into my boardroom in 2 days, hoping I'd save his sinking empire. I glanced at my fountain pen on the desk that night, the gold nib catching the light. My grandmother had been right. I was writing my own story. And this next chapter was going to be my favorite yet. 2 days later, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The boardroom gleamed, floor-to-ceiling windows spilling morning light across the polished mahogany table. A vase of fresh white lilies sat in the center, their scent faint but elegant. I'd chosen the setting deliberately. Modern, expensive, unmistakably mine. My assistant, Jenna, peeked in. "They're here," she said with a small, knowing smile. The door opened and there he was. Ethan Cole. Time had thinned his hair and etched faint lines around his eyes, but the confident swagger was still there, though I noticed it faltered when his gaze landed on me. For a split second, confusion crossed his face. Then realization. And then disbelief. "Claire," he said, like my name was a ghost he hadn't expected to see. I smiled politely. "Mr. Cole, please have a seat." He tried to mask his surprise as the CFO began the pitch. I let them talk about declining revenue, failed product launches, looming debt. Their slide deck was polished, but I barely heard a word. I was too busy watching him, try not to look rattled. When they finished, I folded my hands on the table. "So, if I understand correctly," I said smoothly, "you're asking Donovan Capital for an investment of $50 million in exchange for a minority stake, correct?" "That's right," Ethan said. "We believe this partnership could be mutually beneficial." I leaned back in my chair. Interesting choice of words. You know, I still remember our first meeting, Ethan. You told me my degree in business communication was basically a diploma in talking. A flicker of discomfort passed through his eyes. I might have said something like that, he admitted. But I didn't mean. "Oh, you meant it," I said lightly. "And you were right in a way. My degree was about talking. Convincing. Negotiating. Building relationships. Turns out those skills keep the lights on just fine." Silence. Even his CFO looked like he wanted to sink under the table. I tapped my fountain pen against my notebook. "The thing is, Mr. Cole, you're not here because I need you. You're here because you need me. And that changes everything." The weight of the moment hung in the air. I could see it hitting him. The reversal, the irony, the fact that the woman he once mocked was now the one holding the pen that could sign his company's lifeline. I let the pause stretch, savoring it just enough before breaking it. "I'm willing to invest," I said finally. "But on my terms." His jaw tightened. "What kind of terms?" I slid a folder across the table. "Read them. Every condition is non-negotiable." As he opened it, his eyes moved quickly and then slowed. "Scholarship programs. Mandatory diversity in leadership roles. Paid mentorships for junior employees. Ethical sourcing requirements." He looked up. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," I said. "You accept and I'll wire the funds. You decline and this meeting never happened." I could see the calculation in his face, pride wrestling with desperation. Finally, he nodded. "You have a deal." I took the folder back, signed the contract with my grandmother's fountain pen, and slid it to him. "Welcome to your new chapter, Ethan." He didn't thank me. Not yet. But the look in his eyes told me he knew exactly what had just happened. And so did I. The deal was signed, but I wasn't finished. Money changes hands quickly in this city. It's the intentions behind it that leave a mark. 2 days later, Ethan sat across from me again, this time in my private office. The skyline glowed behind me, the city humming below like a restless engine. "I've reviewed your implementation plan," he said, trying to keep his tone neutral. "Some of these conditions, they're going to require major restructuring." "That's the point," I replied. "Coltech isn't just getting a cash injection, it's getting a course correction." I walked him through each condition. First, a full scholarship program for underprivileged students pursuing business and tech degrees, funded annually from company profits. Second, a mentorship initiative pairing every junior employee with a senior mentor for at least 1 year, with progress reports directly to the board. Third, a mandatory leadership diversity quota. Half of all managerial hires must be women or from underrepresented groups. He exhaled slowly. "That's ambitious." "It's necessary," I said, my voice firm but calm. "Because 9 years ago, you told a young woman her degree was worthless. I'm making sure no one else hears that from anyone in your company ever again." His eyes flickered. Maybe guilt, maybe something softer. "You really never forgot that?" I leaned forward slightly.
"No."
"And I also never forgot what it felt like to walk out of here with nothing but a pen and a promise to myself. This isn't about revenge, Ethan. It's about rewriting the culture that made me want to leave."
He didn't argue.
Maybe he knew there was no point. Instead, he nodded once. "I'll make it happen. And one more thing," I added, sliding a smaller folder toward him. Inside was a proposal for an internal training program, one that included communication, leadership, and empathy workshops for all senior staff. "You're asking me to send my executives to school?" he said with a faint smirk. "I'm asking you," I corrected, "to make sure the people leading your company actually know how to lead. If they can't pass the courses, they can't keep the title." His smirk faded. He closed the folder, stood, and extended his hand. For a moment, I considered not shaking it. But then I did, because this wasn't about holding grudges. It was about proving that the girl he once mocked had grown into a woman who could change the rules for everyone who came after her. As he left, I caught my reflection in the office glass, poised, steady, no trace of the 23-year-old who'd once hidden in the bathroom to cry. I'd won, yes. But more than that, I'd made the win mean something. 3 months later, the changes were visible. Coltech's website now featured scholarship recipients, bright-eyed students with dreams bigger than their zip codes. I received quarterly reports showing mentorship pairings, and the leadership roster was already shifting toward balance. I'll admit, I'd expected Ethan to drag his feet, to resist. But he hadn't. Maybe pride still fueled him, but he was doing the work. One afternoon, a plain white envelope arrived at my office. Inside was a handwritten note.
"Claire,
I didn't see your worth then. That was my failure. You've built something extraordinary, and now you're helping me build it too."
Ethan."
I placed the note in my desk drawer without replying. Not out of malice, but because I didn't need to say anything. Some acknowledgments are best left as they are. That evening, I stayed late in my office. The city lights stretched endlessly below, a mirror of the possibilities I once thought were beyond my reach. On the shelf behind me sat a glass display case. Inside, resting on deep blue velvet, was my grandmother's fountain pen. The same one I'd clutched on my first humiliating day at Coltech. The same one I'd used to sign the deal that changed everything. I unlocked the case, held it in my hand. The weight was familiar, grounding. I thought of my grandmother's voice. "Write your own story, even if they refuse to read it now." I had written it. Every line, every chapter, every hard-earned twist. I walked to the window, looking out over the city, my city now, and felt the quiet, steady pulse of pride in my chest. Some people had laughed at my degree. Some had doubted me. But here I was, holding the pen that had outlasted them all. I smiled to myself and whispered into the glass, like a promise to the woman I used to be. Some people laughed at my degree. I just made sure they'd pay interest on the joke.